Hello, my dear friends. You're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of February of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. In 2 days, we'll see the 4th anniversary of the beginning of the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, and most likely both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, will try to surprise each other. As for the Russian side, during the previous 24 hours, they carried out a massive combined missile and drone attack through the entire territory Ukraine, and the Russians once again were attacking objects of energy infrastructure, mainly in the central part of Ukraine, so somewhere between the western part of energy infrastructure in Ukraine and the eastern part. Lots of missiles and lots of drones the Russians used. The sources are saying that the pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that the Russians used 345 aerial assets to attack Ukraine. Lots of drones. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, brought down 307 targets. So we can say that the Ukraine's air defense system, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, worked more or less effective. And during the night, we received lots of videos of what exactly the Russians were attacking. Let's discuss these videos and let's discuss this situation once again. Let's start first of all with the southern part of Ukraine. The Russians attacked objects of energy and logistical infrastructure in this area. We received a report that Russians damaged attacked this substation in the northern part of the city of Odessa. Significant damage and large-scale fires reported at energy infrastructure objects, according to the State Emergency Service. Most likely the Russians were attacking either this object of energy infrastructure or this one. Another important area that was attacked by Russia is the city of Nikolaev. As for this territory, it was reported that the Russians attacked the object of logistical infrastructure. Strikes were officially made on railway infrastructure in several regions, including Zaporozhye. Railway objects in Donetsk, Zaporozhye, Nikolaev, and Odessa regions were shell damaging 2 locomotives at least. So in these pictures we can see the damage that the Russians dealt during the previous 24 hours during the massive attack. Most likely the Russians were attacking this territory with drones. Another important object was attacked a bit further to the east, and we are talking about this substation. We have 2 videos from this territory. This is the video of attack itself. Here we can see the Russian drone that attacked the territory, and then we can see the same object of energy infrastructure from another angle. Here we can see another episode when the Russians were attacking objects of energy infrastructure. So this is exactly this substation you can see in front of the screens. And here we can see the same object but from another angle. Somewhere from the settlement of Snegirivka, somebody was filming the situation in this area. As you can see, very huge smoke. Most likely the Russians managed to deal significant damage. Now let's move a bit further to the north. Pro-Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian sources reported about significant number of Iskander missiles that the Russians used to attack the city of Krapivnitsky and the territory around. But as of the end of the 22nd of February, we still haven't received anything that can confirm that the Russians indeed managed to deal damage. We believe that in coming days, in 2-3 days, we will receive satellite pictures, and only then we will be able to understand what exactly the Russians attacked between the 21st and the 22nd of February of 2026. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Kiev. The Russians, according to information we have, attacked 3 power stations. The power station number 5, the power station number 6, and according to information we have, the Russians attacked the Tripolskaya power station as well. But as of the end of the 22nd of February, we still haven't received anything that can show us what kind of damage the Russians managed to deal. The only thing we have is the pictures from the eastern part of the city of Kiev, more precisely from the territory of the Kiev agglomeration. This is the territory of Bravary. Here we can see how special services of Ukraine were trying to stabilize the situation, to fix problems in this area, and we see that this is not an object of energy infrastructure. This is a residential area of the city by the name of Bravary. So maybe here we can see the consequences of Ukraine's air defense. Maybe the Ukrainians managed to bring down several missiles that were heading towards the power stations, and the parts of these missiles fell down right exactly in this area, and that's, as you can see, caused some damage to this area. So the Ukrainians and Ukrainian sources published a very interesting article right after this attack. Massive power outages in Ukrainian regions began after nighttime strikes. That was stated by the government authorities. Part of the residents of the Odessa, Kiev, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk and Poltava regions, as well as in the Ukrainian-controlled Zaporozhye Oblast, were left without electricity. The Russian defense minister stated that the strikes were carried out on energy infrastructure facilities used in the interest of the armed forces of Ukraine. Another important thing, I would like to remind you that yesterday the Hungarians, the authorities of Hungary and Slovakia, promised to turn off an electricity supply to Ukraine tomorrow in the morning on the 23rd of February of 2026, and we expected that this could lead to unpredictable consequences for the entire energy infrastructure of Ukraine, but something changed, and today we received a report that the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, changed his mind. He decided not to cut electricity supply Ukraine, but he promised to stop supplying Ukraine with diesel fuels and different types of products that could be created from oil. And he promised that he will restore supply of these products to Ukraine only after Ukrainians resume supply and support of Slovakia and Hungary during using the Druzhba pipeline that is going through the western part of Ukraine. But I would like to remind you that today the authorities of Ukraine stated that they're not going to do this. Ukraine rejects and condemns the ultimatums and blackmail from the leadership of the governments of Hungary and the Slovak Republic regarding energy supplies between our countries. So which means that tomorrow Hungary will continue supplying Ukraine with electricity, but no fuel, especially no diesel, to the armed forces of Ukraine and to Ukraine itself. So we see how exactly the parties are preparing themselves before the next round of talks that most likely is going to take place within the next 3 weeks, most likely on the territory of Geneva. Another important thing is that today, let's say at the same time as all these attacks, at the same time as all these talks and statements regarding the next meeting, the UK authorities and officials and public persons made lots of very interesting statements. For example, during the previous days, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that Ukraine, United Kingdom and its allies should deploy non-combat troops to Ukraine right now to flip a switch in Russian President Vladimir Putin's head. So this was stated during his interview, and today we received another statement, but this time made by the Minister of Defense. United Kingdom Defense Minister wants to introduce British troops to Ukraine allegedly to end the conflict and achieve peace through negotiations, stating a strong and sovereign Ukraine is needed for a safe Europe. So you know that's the anniversary of the beginning of the special military operation of the conflict in Ukraine will take place on the 24th of February of 2026. And telling the truth, I expect many surprises both from Russian and from Ukrainian side, and maybe not just from Ukrainian side. I expect surprises from the European countries as well. So who knows, maybe during the anniversary of the fourth anniversary of the conflict in Ukraine, the United Kingdom will deploy some non-combat troops in Ukraine, and of course they can use this as a significant media victory. So everything might happen during this date. As for the end of the 22nd of February of 2026, the Ukrainians launched their massive attack in the direction of the city of Moscow. The sources are saying that Ukrainians are using approximately or around 100 drones, and they're attacking in the direction of the city of Moscow. And during the evening, we have already received lots of reports from the Russian side of how they were repelling attacks. The Russians are saying that as of the end of the 22nd of February, up to 9 or 7 drones managed to get the city limits of the city of Moscow, but the Russians destroyed everything. As of the end of the 22nd of February, no damage was recorded. Most likely this is not the final wave of attack, and the Ukrainians will continue. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the northern directions, and first let's talk about the Sumy area where the Russians intensified their offensive operations. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were recorded along the border. In this video, for example, we can see how Russians were bombing stations and territories allied between the settlements of Krasnooktyabrsk and Wolfina. It seems that the Russians are planning to begin advancing along railways in this area as well. The Russians, when talking about the Sumy direction, prefer to advance along railways between the territory of the Russian Federation and Ukraine itself. Another important area is the second defense layer of the city of Sumy. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos from this area, and which means that the Russians approached the second defense layer, and now the Russians are trying to attack positions, infrastructure, military infrastructure of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area. It seems that the Russians in coming days will try to enter the settlements of Mala Karchakovka and Karchakovka from the north. If Russians are able to take this territory under complete control, this can lead to unpredictable consequences to the entire defense of the city of Sumy. So this is a very important foothold, and we see that now the Russians are tasked to establish complete control over the territory. We're talking about something like this. So let's wait and see, of course, whether the Russians are able to do this. But if Russians enter these huge forests to the south of Mala Karchakovka and Karchakovka, this is going to be the beginning, basically, of the battle for the city of Sumy itself. A bit further to the east of the city of Sumy, very heavy clashes were recorded around the settlement of Miropolye. During the previous days, the Russians were approaching the settlement of Miropolye from the east, and according to different sources, the Russians managed to cut these pockets. Now the Russians are advancing further in the western direction, and it seems that the battle for Miropolye is going to start also very soon. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the northwestern Kharkiv direction. As you can see here, we have lots of updates as well. The Russians during the previous night attacked the settlement of Troitska, and local sources published this video where we can see the consequences of Russian attack. As you can see, something like a plant was damaged by Russian missiles but not destroyed. A bit further to the east, we received lots of videos from the territory along the border. The Russians were attacking the settlement of Alexandrovka with FPV drones, trying to damage and to destroy the edge positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. A bit further and behind the settlement of Alexandriivka, the Russians attacked the settlement of Velika Pisarivka with FAB. So this building was attacked and destroyed as a result of a bomb attack, and we can see a huge activity of the Russians in this area, which means most likely that the Russians indeed have some plans to keep advancing in this area with the purpose to cut railways between the cities of Sumy and Kharkiv. As for the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region, the clashes are taking place for this huge forest that is located between the Volchansk foothold and the most northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. So the Russians during the previous 24 hours attacked this forest once again with bombs and with the tall flamethrower systems. It seems that right exactly in this area a huge group of forces of the armed forces of Ukraine is present, and the Russians most likely first are going to attack this part of this huge forest with the purpose to cut the Ukraine defense at least in two parts. If we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of the month, we'll see what's exactly is happening here. As you can see, the Russians as of now are bombing the borders of these huge forests, and which means that most likely in coming days they will try to advance in this area with the purpose to capture this territory. So as we discussed, the main purpose of Russians first to take under complete control this part. This will allow them to cut the entire defenses along the border in two pieces, and then the Russians will fight for every single piece separately, for the western part and then for the eastern part, and this will allow the Russians to establish complete control over the border along the river of Volcha, and this is going to be a very dangerous situation for Ukrainians because from the river of Volcha the Russians obviously will continue advancing further in the southern direction towards the settlements of Belый Kolodец and Verlikий Burluk. Now let's move further. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, nothing special was recorded. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, small changes on the ground were recorded around the settlement of Fedorovka Druga. So these are the changes on the ground. This information was provided by pro-Ukrainian sources. As you can see, according to these changes, the Russians managed to infiltrate and to approach the settlement of Fedorovka Druga and the Fedorovka Druga's fortified area. So we are talking about this fortified area that consists of two villages like Fedorovka and Dibrova and three huge forests. The Russians Russians approach this territory, which means that the clashes for this fortified area is going to start very soon. If Ukrainians lose control over this fortified area, we can say that the battle for the Alexandrovka, for the settlement of Alexandrovka begins. And if Ukrainians lose control over the settlement of Alexandrovka, then we can say that the battle for the entire Slaviansk agglomeration has begun. So these two fortified areas are very important because basically they are the last fortified areas before the beginning of the battle for the city of Slaviansk, basically before the beginning of the end of the Russia's demands. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Dobropolye area. During the previous days, additional changes on the ground were also recorded. The Russians managed to improve their positions to the east of the settlement of Dobropolye. The Russians managed to capture these territories according to pro-Russian sources. Furthermore, the Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their positions to the south of Sergeyevka. All updates were provided by pro-Russian sources. As of now, we are waiting, of course, for geolocations, but we see that the Russians are getting closer and closer to the city of Dobropolye. Now we see that the Russians are trying to outflank the settlement from the northeast and from the east. Let's wait and see what is going to be next, obviously, but the battle for Dobropolye is approaching, and the battle for Dobropolye most likely is going to be the main battle of the early spring military campaign. The city of Dobropolye opens the way further deep inside of the Dnipropetrovsk region and in the direction of the southern part of the Kharkiv region. So lots of unseen things are awaiting for us in 2026, and obviously the military campaign of this year will be completely different with the previous years and with the previous stages of the war in Ukraine. As for the Zaporozhye direction, the Ukrainians continue infiltration process in the southern direction. The Ukrainians are trying to get as close as possible to the main supply lines that go between the cities of Gulyai-Polye, Uspenovka and Velika Novoselovka, and the Ukrainians if they continue doing the same, most likely they will be able to get these lines very soon. The Russians are trying to slow down the Ukrainians. These are the changes on the ground between the dates, but the Russians right now are not so let's say serious in this area. Not like maybe there's a wrong words, better to say that the Russians are not paying let's say significant attention to this territory, because now the Russians are completely focused in the western let's say foothold in this area. The Russians are trying to improve their positions along the river of Gaichur, and during the previous 24 hours, as you can see, we received lots of videos from the settlements of Verkhnya Tersia, Vozdvizhevka and so on. Lots of attacks were recorded. The Russians were bombing these villages with tall flamethrower systems, and the Russians were bombing these villages with artillery. So it seems that everything is ready for the major battles for these two settlements, and we start receiving lots of updates. And furthermore, today pro-Russian sources stated that in coming days they will provide us additional updates about the situation on the ground, and we believe that in coming days the Russians most likely will confirm or publish another video of their control over these two settlements. If Ukraine loses control over these two villages, then most likely the Ukrainians will not be able to stabilize the situation almost until the settlement of Orekhov. And of course, these two villages, control over these two villages opens the Russians further away in the southwestern direction towards the city of Orekhov and the settlement of Preobrazhenka. So basically, with falling of these two villages, we can say that the battle for Orekhov begins. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.